Hey, what's going on, guys? Back here with another tea talk. So I just want to address something that I noticed in my videos, and maybe you've noticed it too, is that I say a lot, or there's a lot of stopping and starting in my speech pattern. So I just want to address that and say, a lot of this stuff, most of this stuff comes straight off the dome. Maybe I check Wikipedia for a date or something like that, like 2 seconds before I start the video. But a lot of like the Japanese history and culture and tea facts, come from the back of my mind, of somewhere in my mind, right? So I don't always know what I'm going to say next, but that's something I'll work on, and hopefully you'll bear with me and continue watching these videos. So anyway, so I got another tea in the mail this week, and it's not necessarily a rare tea, but it does come from a region that isn't really talked about all that often in terms of tea growing, although it does produce a good amount of tea in terms of production or whatever. But so it's called Ohmi Tokujo Kabuse Yanagicha. So that's a long name, so let's break it down. So it comes from Shiga Prefecture, or in this case it uses the old name for Shiga, which is Ohmi. And Tokujo, like as I talked about in a couple videos ago, just means super special, let's say. And Kabuse means shaded, so it's a shaded tea, and it's ultimately a shaded sencha. So that's what kabuse means. Sometimes it's referred to as shaded sencha, but it comes from the word kabuseru, which means to place a cover on. So in that case, they use like a very, very dark colored or black mesh covering to cover the leaves for about a week. And this is shorter than another tea that's called gyokuro, which is shaded for 2 to 3 weeks before it's picked. So gyokuro is something I'll cover in later videos, hopefully. But yeah, I think the water is ready, so I'm just gonna put the water in. Let's see. And let's talk about where the tea comes from. So Shiga Prefecture is right next to Kyoto Prefecture. So Kyoto used to be the old capital of Japan, and the Ohmi Province was pretty important province in times past. So from the Heian period, which was like around 800 and onward until the later half of the 1800s, the end of the samurai time, Ohmi Province was important. So it's most famously known for being the home to Oda Nobunaga's castle, Azuchi Castle, or something like that. So if you're familiar with Japanese history, and especially the Warring States period or the Sengoku period, you'll know that Oda Nobunaga is the great unifier of Japan. So he built a castle there and was planning to rule Japan from that castle, from Ohmi Province, before he was assassinated. Unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it. But so after Nobunaga's death, as many of you know, Toyotomi Hideyoshi rose to power. And then when Hideyoshi died, he left, it was sort of this power struggle for who was going to rule Japan after, Hideyoshi. And one of the guys that was sort of running things was this guy Ishida Mitsunari, who was sort of ruling in place of Hideyoshi's son Hideyori until Hideyori came of age to start ruling. So Ohmi Province came into Mitsunari's possession during, after the death of Hideyoshi, and then he held it until, he lost at Sekigahara. So if in 1600, there was this big battle between the forces of Ishida and Hideyori. So the team Hideyoshi, let's say, and team Tokugawa Ieyasu. And in, I think it's in Gifu Prefecture, sort of near Nagoya. They met and they had this big battle, which sort of decided the fate of Japan from then on, called the Battle of Sekigahara. And ultimately, the Tokugawa forces won and defeated Ishida and the Hideyoshi forces, Hideyori's forces as well. Excuse me. But he, that sort of, after that battle, a couple years later, the Tokugawa shogunate was formed, and a period of peace for 250 years was formed, and until like the late 1800s. So that Ohmi province continued to be called Ohmi until the end of the samurai period in like the 1870s, 1880s. And then it became known as Shiga Prefecture as Japan started to modernize, and they got rid of the provincial system and started making these prefectural system of dividing regions. So that's something of Ohmi Province's history, of Shiga Province's history. Shiga is also known for Lake Biwa, which is this massive lake. You can sort of compare it to a Great Lake here in the States, or maybe a Finger Lake up in upstate New York. But it's like this giant freshwater body of water that that takes up a lot of Shiga Prefecture. So if you take a look at here, so this Kabuse makes a difference. It produces a darker shade of tea compared to an unshaded tea. But in terms of, this still looks very much like a Kyoto tea and Uji tea, which is, common of Shiga teas. Only this was shaded, so it's a little bit darker and should have more of a richer taste, you can say. Stronger taste. Oh. So yeah, it does taste like a Kabuse shaded tea. There is that more umami flavor, that and stronger taste compared to maybe an unshaded tea, like I said. All right, so I'm going to continue drinking this, and hopefully you found this interesting, and hopefully have a good night. Take care.